Fuck, I'm not gonna be able to do it with light. It's too fucking bright. Oh shit, I don't need to take the highway. Hello. I'm sorry, I can't run the light because I can't fucking see out the window. You don't see it. That's right. Sup. I mean, you can put a suppressor on. I don't really use I don't like using suppressors on pistols. I'll use them on 22s. That's about it. Drew asked me if there's a suppressor on the pistol. It is threaded. You know, it's Glock metric threads. That's set for a. I do have I've got a 9mm can that I can put on there, but I don't usually do it. I usually run cans on rifles and carbines, usually carbines, and then for pistols I pretty much like 22, and that's about it. If I was going to do a suppressed pistol, I'd do a suppressed 9mm carbine. The suppressors are really, you know, like, it took me a long time of shooting cans to realize that it's actually a detriment on a carbine. Like shooting suppressed is a limited effectiveness in terms of degrading your ability to run your gun really hard, and there's just no way really around it. And I mean, you can get away with it for small volume fire. You just can't. I mean, you can't really do it in like any kind of serious capacity. It just doesn't. It doesn't work. At least with ARs. There's probably other guns. I mean, I've shot cans on other guns, but not as extensively as AR. Like AR is mostly where I'm shooting cans. So what I found is that's more effective is like obviously a bolt gun, like any kind of long range gun, is really effective with a can. You know, subsonic carbines, those are pretty effective. It's still limited, so it's like, you know, you would use it for your suppressed purpose, and that's about it, you know. And then like 300 blackout, you know, same thing. But the suppressed stuff is really good on 22. Like 22 is fantastic suppressed, especially fixed, like anything fixed barrel. Yeah, bolt guns are really good with cans. It makes a lot of sense. I need to I'm not gonna buy a 50 cal can, but I need to like make one, like fabricate one, and then put it on my 50. I wish I would have got more. Like, I wish I had. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe like a 7.62 by 39, or even the 300 blackout bolt gun, like the Ruger Ranch or whatever the fuck it is. I always saw those, and they were like $300, and I always intended on buying one. I just never got around to it. Now I'm not gonna get one, but I should have fucking. If you can get that stuff, you should get that. Like the CZ 7.62 by 39 bolt guns. A 5.56 bolt gun, like any of your common calibers in a bolt gun, like that would be a very utilitarian gun to have for just something that can shoot well. Wait, somebody's writing in the comments. Let me see. For freeze plugs, what's a freeze plug? You're gonna have to tell me what a freeze plug is, because I'm not. If I know what it is, I don't know it by that name. What glows do we have in the chat? I have a Sharps bolt. I've got an AR with a Sharps bolt. I like it. I think the Sharps bolt is interesting. I like Sharps bolt. I also like the KAC bolts, or the LMT bolts. They're now I wouldn't go out of my way to buy one, right? Like, if you got a good deal on one, or you can get one, or you already have one, they're good to go. I wouldn't. I'd buy maybe. I use a Sharps bolt on a. Let's see. I was using it on a 300 blackout for a long time. I switched it over to five. Like I have a spare 5.56 gun, like a 14.5, and I put it on that. And I think the Sharps bolts are rad. Am I being followed? I hope not. I mean, maybe. Like followed, like in the vehicle. Tom asked me where we're driving. Wouldn't you like to know, you fucking glower? Why don't you just look at my phone data? Well, what do you? So Cliff asked me if I would recommend a 300 blackout or an AR-10 build. You got really divergent purposes there. What do you want to do? Oh wait, somebody's telling me what the freeze plug is. Yeah, I'm trying not to crash here. Oh, it's like a sacrificial pressure release for engine block. I never knew that. Does every vehicle have a freeze block? Well, okay, so now number one, I would, depending on what your use is for the AR-10, right? Totally depends, right? So to me, 300 blackout and AR-10, we're talking like fucking, I don't know. We're talking like pineapple and milk here when we're talking about 300 blackout and AR-10. It's pineapple and milk. So the 300 blackout is going to be like the equivalent of your MP5 SD uses, but with a little bit more accuracy and a little bit more, its ability. It has a better ability to be tailored for precision use. For like within the limitations of the weapon. And you can also shoot hot. You can go supersonic if you want to. So, which is basically like shooting I'm assuming if you're doing 300 black, I'm assuming you're going as short as possible. And so in that case, you're basically shooting like a short barreled 39, like by 39, which is actually good for 300 blackout because the like that cartridge is pretty efficient in supersonic velocities, like in terms of your overall pressure, velocity, grain weight equation. It's pretty efficient under an extremely short barrel, unlike high velocity calibers and shit like that. And so 300 blackout does have good variability in its mission set, and it's good to go. Now the military uses for like special missions units, when they do 300 blackout, they're pretty much only going to do like 12.5, 11.5. They don't even do, as far as I'm aware, they don't do any of the like super shorty stuff because of the gimped gas tube, which can be an issue. You can do a curly Q gas tube, and there's some like custom expanded volume gas tubes that you can get that will give you better reliability. But I've used GIMP gas tubes and I don't have any problem on like super shorties. And I prefer 300 blackout as a super shorty so that you get the like MP5 SD effect. So that being said, if you're going to do 300 blackout, you should, in my opinion, you should also invest in reloading if you're not doing reloading. So then you can modify your 5.56 cases and reload 300 blackout, because it's always been kind of expensive. I mean, it is available most of the time these days because the 300 blackout wave has kind of like gone away, but it's still, the ammunition's still being produced. But AR-10s are kind of a completely different beast. So with an AR-10, you're basically like, you know, depending on what your ideal is, like I don't know what you're getting into with that, but you know, it would typically be you're doing like a man stopper, like an 800 meter and end man stopper, you know. That would be like your AR-10, and it's gonna have the cost of additional weight and cost of ammunition and shit like that. I would also recommend with 308, I also recommend reloading, unless you can buy, you know, you can buy match ammunition, then do that. But if you can't afford that, I would put the investment up front for reloading and do, you know, reload yourself some AMAX or some fucking SMKs or whatever, and get like a real good tight load on your gun that you build. There's lots of, and then it honestly gets into like, if you're gonna do reloading with an AR-10, then you could do a non-standard caliber, like, you know, you could do 6.5. You could even do, honestly, like, so 6.5 is very good at point to point. It does, I would imagine, I've never used it like shooting people, so I don't know, but I would imagine that it has, I mean, if you're connecting with the target, it's going to have effect, but I would imagine that like your energy delivery is probably suffering at extended ranges for people targets. And so now the military has done some 260 AR-10s that are like, you know, secret sauce AR-10s. They do 260 because they're able to use the 308 parent case for that, but it's, you know, 6.5 equivalent. It's probably like, I don't know, like 200 yards, 100 yards lesser on standard ranges, unless you're playing around with your Projo triangle equation. Then you can match them depending on what, you know, depending on what which apples you're comparing. You could also do, which is kind of unusual, would be like a 708. A 708 would be like a 7mm and a 308 case. This is just all extended from like, if you're going to do AR-10 and you're reloading. If you're just buying a box AR-10 and you're buying match ammunition, then you're like, that's pretty simple. You're already good to go. But if you're going to be reloading, now you get a whole jar of worms that you're opening, where you can go into calibers. Like if you do 708, you're going to get in between 308 and 6.5, and you're gonna get that additional velocity and range, and you're still gonna have like pretty good kill effect. Like people that shoot whitetail, which is approximately like your man killing equivalent, like whitetail, people typically prefer 708 versus like 6mm and shit like that, in terms of killing stuff in like one hit. You know, of course, shot placement is always paramount. Like you can, I mean, if you hit the right place, you can shoot them with a fucking BB gun. But, you know, now if you're talking about like, if you're not going out and doing some dope on a auto loader, like just with a boom stick, I would recommend right away. I would recommend buying if you're just buying box 308 and you just want a 308 fucking manslugger, I would get this is what I would do. I would get the DPMS G2, because they're not very hot right now. You can get them pretty cheap. They have different versions of that. If you get the 16-inch pencil barrel version, it's hammer forged chrome lined. It comes with a fixed front sight post, so if that's not your thing, you can change out your gas block and then run a handguard over it. Any of your handguards that interface with a delta ring are compatible with that. So like you get like the Troy M-Lock or like anything like that, and it'll fucking clamp on around the delta ring, and then you run a low pro gas block, and you're fucking good to go. It's great. I would probably recommend when you buy it to contact DPMS and get an extra bolt, like a spare bolt, only for the reason that bolts are typical like failures on any kind of gun when you like run it into a volume other than your like throat erosion and shit, which you're probably not going to see. But you could have some kind of catastrophic fucked up unknown failure with a bolt. And so because it's non-standard, I haven't had any problems with, I have a G2, I don't have any fucking problems with it. But if you did have problems with it, it would be in the bolt, because it is thinner so they can get smaller in it, and it's totally proprietary. So if you busted one in the apocalypse, you're not going to have another one unless you already bought it. So if you buy a G2, I'd recommend buying a spare bolt. Yeah, G3s are dope. The G3s are hella dope. They're I definitely recommend an optic on a G3, but like a red dot, like a G3 with a micro red dot is great. They will fucking fold your brass. You're not gonna be doing much reloading on it. Yeah, I mean, if you just want a slugger gun, I mean, my G2 is accurate as fuck, and it's a pencil barrel, hammer forged chrome line barrel, and it's accurate as fuck. I run a 1:8 on it, and it's amazing. And I put a cut. You probably also on the G2, you probably want a comp because it's so light that you're gonna feel every fucking ounce of 308. Especially with an optic, if you're doing like a magnified optic and your eye box is kind of small compared to a red dot, I would probably get a comp, like a Wicked comp. But in terms of the G2, like it is not standard, so you're gonna lose all the standard, not all, but a lot of your standard parts. A lot of it will be standard, but in terms of your barrel and bolt, that's all non-standard. Your delta ring, that's non-standard. So the threads are different on the G2. The external dimension of the delta ring is the same as an M4, but the internal threading is a wackadoo thread, and so you're not gonna buy any handguard with a AR-15 barrel extension thread and put it on there. It's not gonna work. But anything that clamps onto an M4 delta ring, you can run on a G2. And then it is light. It is like it's exactly like if you were walking around with an M4 and you just crammed a 308 magazine in it. That's how it feels like when you're using it, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, I mean the SR25s are awesome if you want to buy one. I mean they're fucking $4,000 usually. I used to have an APC. I never shot it. I sold it. I had to sell it. I ran out of money. I had to sell it when I became a poor fag. I had the APC with the chrome line barrel. SR25. No, Dark, you can actually, so on a pencil barrel, you can actually take, so it's really interesting, right? It's almost counterintuitive. So the pencil barrel will heat, and you will get, like your string dispersion will be greater in terms of like what you see downrange in high volume fire. But in terms of the dependability, like the failure of the barrel, it's not really an issue. What usually fails is the gas tube. Like if you're doing like, high volume, machine gun dumps and stuff, it's typically the gas tube. And the actual reason that the gas tube ruptures, it's actually not even like when they did the Colt light machine gun, right? They made an extra heavy stainless steel gas tube. There's also companies that have experimented with doing like Inconel gas tubes and shit like that, where it's high heat steel. That's something that you see too. But what's actually going on is that your gas tube is heating to the point where it's drooping, and then the gas pressure, because of the droop, is able to pop out the side of the fucking gas tube. So you can actually all you need for ultra high volume fire is a gas tube support about, I don't know, like a little ways behind where the gas tube comes out of the block. That's really all you need. Like if you had a support on there, either like a ceramic support, or even, I mean, you could use steel. You could even, you could probably, I'll bet you could use like a conduit or pipe, like stud holder, like the flexible galvanized steel. I'll bet you could fucking wrap that around your gas tube to the barrel to hold the distance, and I'll bet it would like prevent you from having fucking gas tube ruptures under high volume fire. But you typically won't see barrel failure even in a pencil barrel unless you're just getting fucking nutso with the mag dumps. I mean, you're gonna have to. I can tell you, you're gonna have to have like beta drums. You're not gonna do it with stick mags. I think. I mean, I don't know. If you could pop a pencil barrel with stick mags, I mean, we're talking about something that's like so ridiculous it would never happen in real life. You have to be like out of range, like, mag to gun, mag to gun, mag to gun. What else? What are we talking about? What are we talking about here? On the Mark 12, like on the fucking early ones, the ones that released, or what? What are you talking about? We got Mark 12s and Noah Hide. You guys gotta make up your fucking mind. We're getting divergent here on topics. What is it? I think mine's a 1 in 7. I mean, I don't, because we're such, like when I'm shooting 300 blackout, I'm shooting at such short range. I don't really. I think 1 in 7 is like your standard, isn't it, for blackout shorty? I don't even know, to be honest. I mean, I think of it like a subgun, so it's like I'm not really getting deep in the weeds on twist on blackout. I guess if you were doing like a 16-inch gun or something, doing high velocity, that would be a lot more important. I mean, you're shooting a lot of grain weight, so I would think you'd want a tighter twist. Although it is 30 cal. We're not even talking about Jews. So he says, talk. Okay. I guess hang on, I'm gonna get to a better spot here. Hang on, I don't know. I'm on a country road. I'm trying to get to a better spot here. The internet doesn't want the dog. It's not happening. Okay. I'm gonna go to my. This spot's typically pretty good. Fucking feds are watching it. They're like, man, this fucking paranoid idiot thinks that we're like always giving a stream. He's really just like lives in the backwoods. That's it. They're like, we need to get, he thinks this world government, we need to get a new tower out there so his stream doesn't get interrupted. So he quits blaming us. Okay. So we got some divergence here on the topic. So let's all right, how many people want to hear about Noah Hide? and shit like that, and how many people want to hear about guns. Okay, got one gun, two no hide. Two, three, both. Okay, okay. All right, so we got both. Okay. All right, let's. What are our topics for guns? Let's get the top. Let's get the top. Let's get three topics for guns, and then we can talk about no hide. This is an eclectic stream. And somebody else wants to hear about aliens. Well, we already did a stream on aliens. What else? What else could I possibly say about aliens? They just JFK'd me. Drop my phone. Budget optics. Okay. All right. Here's what. Okay. Budget optics. So, I'm of the opinion that a red dot is the best all-purpose optic. Particularly if money is no limitation, I would say get you a T2. If money is kind of a limitation, I would say get you like a used T1 or H1. If money is for sure a limitation, I would say get a Holosun 403R is the model. Very particular. Holosun has lost their mind and they've started to switch out the 403R for a 403 with a gold dot. You don't want that because it's gold. You want red. You also don't want green dots. You want red dots, right? Green is like you do see more shades of green with the human eye than most colors. That means that you don't want to use it for a fucking dot. You want a red because there's no red in your natural environment, right? So you want red. Green, everything's fucking green if you're outside, so you don't want green. Even though it's neon green, it doesn't matter. Just by being not contrasted enough, it's not a good choice for. I like back in the day, I used to run a like a 1:4. Like this would have been like early 2000s. I ran a 1:4 Trijicon green dot. You know, with the fiber optic. And when I was shooting matches and stuff, well, don't even get me started about Trijicon glass. I don't like Trijicon glass, period. I'm not into it. I like their RMRs and shit. I don't like their magnified glass. Other than ACOG, I think ACOG's alright. But I don't like their variable stuff like acupoints and shit like that. I don't like that. The way that they're doing their glass. The green will get you lost in the sauce when you're like, you know, definitely, you know, I slowed down a lot trying to use a green optic. So I don't use any fucking, this would have been, you know, I had to learn my lessons. So I don't, for the last, you know, 10 years, no green, okay? No more. You want red. Budget optics for Holosun 403R. And if you buy that, if you can afford it, switch out the mount. Don't use the Holosun mount. Buy a like a Reptilla or a fucking Geisley or fucking LaRue mount or whatever, and put Loctite on it when you install it. And then like don't take it off the mount. Leave it on the mount with Loctite, and then put on whatever gun you want. Zero it up good. Zero it up good. What you need to do for zeroing, if you guys aren't used to this, the way that you do zeroing, depending on how, you know, your situation, if you want to be efficient at zeroing, the way that you do it is you first you take your upper off and you mount your optic where it's going to go. When you mount an optic on an AR, anything with like a NATO rail on it, a Picatinny rail, you drop it in the slot where you want it to go. If you're doing a red dot, I would recommend leaving enough space for a magnifier and a rear sight, even if you don't have one, just so that you can put one on there later, right? Obviously, like you probably don't want to run your fucking red dot all the way back where your iron sight would go anyway, but I would leave some space just so that you have more real estate. If you ever, like, I don't know what the situation would be, but it make toward further towards the front of the receiver is a better spot typically. Certain situations would be different, but that's kind of the idea. You always push it forward in the slot, right? So when you put it in a slot, it's gonna have some movement. You always push it forward and hold it, and then you lock it down, right? The reason being why is because when you fire under recoil, your gun recoils backwards, and your optic mass holds still, and you'll actually get, you'll get a change. Now you're not gonna get much of a shift out until it's like out past 300 meters, like from your 0 point. But you don't want any shift, so just push the motherfucker forward in the slot. Stop inertial travel. Okay. When you zero, the way that I do it is I take the upper off the gun, I pull out the carrier group, and I set it on a fucking table. Then I fucking rotate the upper, looking down the barrel hole at something as far away as I can. Being like, if you have a big ass room like a garage or something like that, anything that's like 50 feet or so, something like that. And I find a spot that I can look through the barrel and know where it's at. When I pull my eye away from the barrel, be like, there's that spot. And then I go up there and I put a little fucking piece of black tape in the center of the giant hole that you're gonna see in the barrel. And then I like try to put the black tape where it's gonna be approximately concentric in the space of the barrel, like as you're looking through it on the wall, right? So I'm putting a piece of black tape on the wall. I'm trying to get it. It might take you like once or twice walking back and forth. Get it in the center. And like, don't touch your upper and optic. Get it in the center when you're like peering through the fucking barrel hole, and then I go back, and then I put the fucking you don't actually have to do any like camming or anything when you're doing this, because this is like just your preparatory dry zero. And I drop my dot at least vertically in line with the fucking piece of tape or whatever, right? That'll save you a couple rounds. Now you're set up at that distance, at the 50 feet or whatever you're doing, and probably a little bit beyond that, to switch to live rounds when you get the range. And so you put a piece of paper out there. What I like to do is I just use like computer paper. So I use computer paper. If you have a little bit of money, you can buy a roll of like 1.5 or 2-inch black dots, like stickers. And you just slap that bitch right in the middle of the paper. If not, you use this fucking Sharpie marker and draw a fucking 2-inch circle, right? The other thing that you can do is an X. Like an X works really good. Like if you do a standard black X, like if you use computer paper and you can print it. An X works really good with 90-degree corners, because you can really, especially with like crosshair optics, because you can align them into the angles of the X, right? For orientation, instead of just fixating on a dot, you have windage, and you have horizon alignment with your fucking X and elevation alignment. Now you shoot 3 rounds. It should be a really tight group. If your group's not super tight, then your shooting's fucked up. You try zero with fucked up skill, but it's gonna be kind of sloppy. So the idea is you want to get, you should be having tight groups. If you have a tight group, the first thing that you do is bring it into elevation alignment always. So like you wouldn't fuck around, and like if you were fucking like, if your dot was here and you shoot a group here, you're not, or like here or something like that, you're not gonna bring it down here. Like you're not gonna do windage alignment first, okay? You do fucking elevation alignment first. So you get your fucking group right here. And then you're gonna bring it down, and if we're talking 5.56, there's a lot of different ways that you can zero, okay? If you go online, if you're reading on the internet, you're gonna see all kinds of shit like Marine Corps zero, Army zero, all these things, right? All this stuff's nonsense. It's nonsense. Now, I mean, it's not nonsense. There are reasons that they do it, but in terms of like, they're not understanding what's going on when they're trying to make a simple, Kellogg brand zero for the masses in the Corps and shit like that. That's what they're doing, right? and have standardization. You don't need to do that if you're not in the Corps. The way that you zero is you're going to take whatever distance that you want to be able to hit with your gun. If it's outside of the like, you have this concept that's called MPBR, which is maximum point blank range, and what that means is, like, if you're shooting a target, it doesn't matter what it is, a piece of paper or an animal or whatever, it's going to have a radius associated with it of some size. It doesn't matter. For defensive stuff, I like to use human head, so 8-inch. I do an 8-inch MPBR. Somewhere between 8 and 4 is usually like where depending on how precise you want to go. 8 to 4 inches is your MPBR. If we're talking about shooting people. With the cartridge that you're shooting, regardless if you're reloading or shooting box ammunition like M855 or whatever, there is a, in your external trajectory, meaning the arc that your bullet naturally takes as it's fighting or succumbing to gravity, right? And then your line of sight, which is abstract, it's just fucking straight, it's just like, it's the speed of light, it's your eye, straight line, right? And so your line of sight is straight, your actual external trajectory is a parabola that's succumbing to gravity, right? Now you can zero, like, obviously you'll notice, like, if you have a straight line and a parabola, what are you gonna get? You get two intersections, right? You get an intersection early, and you're gonna get an intersection later, right? What you're doing when you're zeroing is you are controlling where the intersection is. Because the parabola is not actually like a perfect parabola that's zeroed, or I shouldn't use that term because it's going to get confusing, but like a perfect circle, is always going to be the same, right? In theory, like, no matter where you put it. Well, your rifle isn't like that because you're shooting a bullet and it has an external trajectory. So the distance from your muzzle that you try to control the intersection changes the width of the parabola, right? What does that mean? Dugan, these are a bunch of big words. Just pour maple syrup in my mouth. Okay, you got it, buddy. If you were shooting 5.56 and you want to go beyond the range that's associated with 5.56, you need to do something like a Marine Corps zero. What that means is that your vertical spread is going to be extreme because you're going to set it so that you can fucking reach way the fuck out there, right? If you're not going to extend beyond what's traditionally like the max point target range for 5.56, and if you don't want to do any guesswork, you 100 metric is your zero for M855. So you do 100 metric. It's technically, if you run ballistics, it's not 100 metric. You're a couple meters off. But 100 metric is easy to remember, and it's fucking great. So do 100 metric with a rangefinder, or use fucking Google Maps or something. Get 100 meters, know where it's at, have a pretty good idea of it. Use a GPS, whatever you got. You can use GPS. Your X that you make, like if you make a 1-inch wide X, like 1-inch bars on an X, your fucking bullet at 100 meters should hit right in the fucking dead center of the X, and it should be a nice tight group in the X. If you do that, then this is what happens. Let's say that you're shooting somewhere and you're not hitting it. You need to aim up a little bit. That's it. So if you're ever shooting and you're like, fuck, I'm not hitting the target, aim a couple inches higher at the target, not like at your eye, right? Like at the target, like this is like a head, and you're like shooting at it, and you're like, fuck, I don't know where my bullets are going, it's not hitting the head. You need to aim at the target as you see it. If this is the head, this is 8 inches, you need to aim like right here. That's it. So you just pick it up a little bit, a couple inches, and then you're gonna hit the target. If it's really far, like if you're shooting way farther than you should, you're gonna have to aim up a little bit more, right? Like if you're shooting 300 meters, it's gonna be like, you're gonna aim up like 4 to 5 inches at the target, I'm saying. If you're shooting, 500, 600 meters, now you're gonna have to aim up quite a bit. Like you're gonna be like 1.5 feet probably in the air at the target. Okay, which is easy to do in an optic. Like you can see in the optic, like if you can see a person like a foot, you're gonna be able to see a foot, and then you're gonna be able to mentally calculate that in the optic in your sight picture, and you're gonna be able to fucking hold dope and pull a trigger. It's way faster under stress. Like if you're getting shot at or something, and you're like, "Fuck!" I not only do I not remember math, but I also don't remember how gravity works or anything like that. It is way more effective to just aim up a little bit when you miss than it is to calculate like where are my hold unders and holdovers. Because if you do like a core zero or something like that, you're going to have a significant spread of like under the target, right? Now it's not far. It's easily mitigatable with training. It's just that you have to, like Marine Corps guys are going to be used to it, so they're gonna, that's just Marine Corps is going to do Marine Corps drill most of the time. Marine Corps guys, but that in terms of like understanding what's going on, this is what's going. Marine Corps zero is a standardized zero for having a like extending. They're taking a huge MPBR, which is much greater than 8 inches, and they're by doing that, they're increasing the effective range within the MPBR of the CNS in a vertical string, if that makes any sense, right? So like they know that they're going to hit like approximately in the spine at distances all the way out to where Marine Corps shoots, which I'm sure probably goes to like, a fucking 5,000 yards or whatever they're doing, Every Marine Corps, every Marine is a sniper. I've never met a Marine that's not a sniper. Yeah, I know it's 500 yards on their tables. I know that. It's a joke. Every Marine that I've ever met is either recon or a sniper. I'll put it that way. It's just tough love. I'm just kidding. I know several Marines that are fucking all around. I've never met a Marine that I didn't like. Well, no, I have met a Marine that I didn't like, but vast majority of the Marines that I meet are like really fucking rad. The Comp M3, they're okay. Their battery life really suffers. So these days, honestly, like with like battery life is a deal, right? Like so I would recommend an EOTech. If you're talking about CQB or like shooting from vehicles, EOTech is king. Like CQB vehicles, you will be so fucking fast with an EOTech. Like if you're moving and shooting, which you shouldn't do, you should be holding still when you shoot. But if you're moving and shooting, I mean, if you're in a vehicle, you're moving no matter what, so you just gotta work with what you got. But like, a fucking EOTech is fast as fuck. I would also always recommend bumping your optic up. So if you're using like an EOTech or something, I would do a riser. Like LaRue used to make a fucking badass riser that you can still find. I don't think they manufacture it anymore, but they used to manufacture it for SMEs in like the infancy of the Iraq War. There's that. There's all kinds of different risers. You can probably find like cheap risers that just use Allen keys and shit. Like good to go. Just put it on there, put Loctite on there, good to go. Raise it up. 193. If you can get that for your optic, that's great. Like if you're doing a T1 or something, 193 is great. Even they do have what's called night vision height, which I believe is like 2 1/4. Which is like really extreme. If you're into extreme stuff, it's rad. You can get you get really high height if you do a carry handle mounted red dot. You can be really, really fast with like I'm talking like if you're standing in a if you're standing erect shooting a gun like as fast as you can, you really want it high. Now if you go high on an optic, you are increasing the fucking angle of your line of sight to the external trajectory, and so you're going to have more extreme crossover, especially at close ranges, right? Because even with one of the things I didn't mention, I talked about 100 meter zero, and like if you miss, you just aim up. That is true at battle engagement distances. If we're talking CQB, like shooting inside of a room, you will have, you're going to have holdover. Any of the zeros will, and that has to do with the distance from your actual optic height to the center of your bore. Like on an AR-15, you're talking about, like, the AR-15 is cool because they made it so that the fucking like the distances are standardized, set up to like your ocular socket, you know, like for your eye, for like a cheekbone, for like normal people, right? I mean, I'm sure if you have like fucking bovine DNA, you're gonna have like some giant, like crazy bone structure and shit. But for normal fucking people, it's standard. I think it's what is it, 2 inches? It's 2 inches from your fucking bore axis to your standard height optic. If you go 193, then you're like way higher, and it's fast as fuck because you can stay more erect and just like pivot your gun and shoot, and it's like really fast. Instead of like, you know, instead of like bearing down, like you do have to anatomically, typically, you know, you have to have your cheek bared down and indexed on a rifle. Oh, and that's the other thing is indexing, right? This is a basic principle of shooting. Indexing. So if you're shooting with iron sights or with the red dot, indexing is important for accuracy. So what do I mean by that? If you zero your rifle and you're using iron sights, however you zeroed, where your face was, eye to the rear sight, wherever that was, it doesn't matter what it is, technically. There are ways that are better than others. There are some ways that are very disadvantageous. Wherever your eye is in relation to your rear sight, for maximum accuracy, it has to be the same, like every time that you shoot, right? So like if you move your face to a different spot on the rifle in orientation to the rear iron sight, it will affect your point of impact. So what people do for like an AR-15, like in the military, you index with the charging handle. That's like typical. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just that that's the most practical and simple way. So when you're fucking, you know, when you're getting on your gun, I got a shopping bag on my light there. So when you're getting on your gun, right, like you're gonna put your fucking nose on your fucking charging handle at the tip, like the same way every single time, right? Right? And when you do that, even with, what you should understand is that even with optics, even with reflex sights like a red dot, like a T2 or even an EOTech, but especially with like an aim point. T2, it doesn't. Now T2 is pretty minimum. T1 has a little bit more extreme parallax, but you do have. If your dot, the dot doesn't have to be in the center, but wherever you zeroed at with the dot, like wherever the dot is in your circle, like if you want to, you could zero with your dot down here. I wouldn't do that because you have aberration in the lens construction, and they focus on making it clearest in the center with a minimal amount of aberration. So I would always zero in the center, and then if you're ever taking like hard shots where you're like, I really need this shot to count, put your dot in the center, just like you did when you zeroed. But in short distances, you can get away with getting fucking sloppy Susan with it, and throw that bitch all the way to the side, you know, and just rat, you know, you can get away with that. But indexing is a thing with iron sights or reflex sights. It doesn't matter what it is. You will have, like if you take an AR, throw on a red dot sight, and then you start shooting at extreme ranges, like I'm talking like 600 meters plus, you will start to see the effects of that shit. But it translates into everything. It translates into, like at close ranges, it translates into fucking like fractions of an inch, you know what I mean? Like in terms of shot placement, you know? So just being aware of it is important, because if you're, you know, if you come home and like your wife's being held hostage like fucking Nakatomi Plaza or something, like that fucking shit is important, right? So just understanding it in your head so that you can use it as a tool if you need to is important. You know, if most people are going to be shooting out to like 600 meters where it's going to make a big difference. But even in CQB stuff, it makes a fucking difference. All right. What else? Anything else on guns here? Did that answer questions on zeroing or optics or what? Slanted red dots? I don't know what that means. Somebody asked, are slanted red dots a meme? I don't know because I don't know what that is. Oh, a side mount red dot? Oh, canted. Okay. So, okay, yeah, you can do this. So, okay, here's something. Now, this is something that you can't do in theory. You need to, like, I can tell you about this. You're, like, don't even try to stow it unless you're going to go out in the field and, like, get a handle on it, right? So, like, there are certain situations. So, if you didn't know this, if you're, like, let's say you get into a defensive shooting or something, like something where it's like you get killed. If you're shooting, the way that you want to shoot, if you're picking a position, you always want to be sideways exposed. You don't want to be top exposed. What I mean by that is, like, if you can imagine, you know, I don't know, if like this is your car hood or whatever, and you can either stick out from the front by the headlights for exposure, or go over the hood for exposure, you always want to go out the side. Like, you don't want to fucking stick your head high up, right? The reason why is because it just, because of the way that geometry works with the human eye and shit, and horizons, and the way that people see, like, you'll be spotted and engaged a lot faster if you go vertical rather than going horizontal. So you always want to do horizontal exposure. That means that you should practice having a slight lean, right? Like if you're serious about, like, I want to be able to, like, shoot defensively, and you're thinking that you're going to shoot at people that are going to shoot back at you, well, you know, you should pretty much be training, like, lean all the time. You shouldn't be training, like, in a fucking natural position, because the natural position is like standing or kneeling or something, or laying down on the ground. I mean, laying down on the ground is fine, actually. Laying down on the ground is good to go. I mean, you're laying down on the ground. But, like, standing there, being centered in your gravity, that is, like, not the most devastating way to fucking deliver fire. Like, you want to be fucking, like, leaning, right? You want to be, like, doing minimal exposure around something and having, like, getting practice with your like, I mean, it's gonna be, if you don't, like, work out or, like, exercise and stuff, you're gonna have difficulty, not necessarily because of strength, because you're not gonna have hip flexibility in terms of getting your fucking top end out and have enough strength in your hips to have offset on your base and to your top, right? But you always want to go fucking out horizontally in exposure, typically. If for some reason you have to go, like, let's say you're like confined, so you can't go sideways, you can't go out the side, and you have to go over top, people will do shit like, you know, they'll fucking do like that, you know what I mean, where it's like your gun, so that way you're not having to, like, expose more of the gun, and you can be flatter, so it can just be like your eye and then the fucking gun, and you can do it like this. Now, when you do that, or like shooting under something is the other time, like shooting under, you typically need 2 points of contact with a rifle for it to be stable for more than one shot. If you're only doing one shot and you're not going to follow up, you're going to have less than 2 points of contact. If you're going to deliver multiple rounds, you need 2 points of contact, meaning, like, you know, like, if I hold this bitch sideways with one hand and had it in the shoulder, you don't want to shoot like that. You want to have a hand up here, so there's shoulder contact and fucking hand contact up here. Or you can also do fucking optic contact. You can actually hold the fucking optic. Like, if you can't get your hand up there because you got to stick it through something and you're going to shoot underneath it, you can hold the optic as a point of contact, right? So you just fucking grip your optic, stick it through there, and then you're going to shoot, right? Now, we're at a 90-degree orientation right here. I don't know if you can even see that. We're at a fucking 90-degree orientation, right? And this is airsoft, by the way. This isn't a real firearm, you two fuckers. So this is a 90-degree orientation. So what's going to happen with a 90-degree? You're going to get with a 90-degree orientation, depending on, I mean, regardless of distance, what is going to happen is that you're gonna, you're looking at your target. Here's your target right here. You're gonna be looking at it, and you're gonna have your red dot, and you're gonna bring it onto target, and then you're gonna fire, and your bullets, like let's say I'm holding the gun exactly how I was holding it, right? I'm holding the gun fucking sideways. My target's here. I put my red dot here. I fire. My bullet's gonna go up here. Okay. If I'm doing it the opposite way, if I'm left-handed, I'm holding the gun right here. I'm a weirdo, so I'm left-handed. You shoot with my left eye like a weirdo, and I shoot at it. My bullet's gonna go up here. Okay, the distance that you're at to the target is gonna make it more extreme, like depending on how close or far you are away. It's always gonna be offset, but your actual height, like over the target in parallel to the target, will change with your distance, right? Does that make sense? To figure it out, you have to go out and shoot. Like you're not gonna be able to take that in theory with just what I say and be like, okay, now I know how to shoot sideways. Like you have to go out and shoot at different distances to see what the divergent effect is. Why do people not have visible lasers for rifles? I don't know. I mean, I guess they would be. They're good for. They'd be good for CQB. Like a visible laser is good for CQB. It's not good for like outside. I mean, honestly, even IR lasers. Like if you're operating in an environment where people have nods, like your enemy has nods. Like nowadays, everybody has nods. Like IR lasers are actually like a. So number one, if you've never done like nighttime fighting and stuff, it's a little bit difficult. It seems easy at first, as long as like the person that you're dealing with can't see you. Then it's easy and things make sense. If they can see you, things get a lot more complicated, and there's like an entire new layer of. It's like an entire new layer of a battlefield that doesn't exist without that technology. And so the like even IR lasers. I know that when I was in Iraq, there was practically, we did have some guys would have nods, but it's very unusual. It's extremely unusual. Vast majority of Iraqis did not have night vision, and so even then, there would be like extreme like if you fucking accidentally fired your laser on a like a raid or something, if you're fucking like hitting your pack button and shit and like set off your laser, like you're gonna get a bunch of like like it's not now if we're actually fighting a force that had night vision, it's a fucking huge deal. I mean, you can like if you fire and it's the same thing with visible laser, right? If you fire that motherfucker during a fucking like let's say there was like twilight and you have a visible laser and you're outside. We're not talking about a CQB situation. We're talking like you're like outside somewhere, right? When you shine the laser at a target, you are automatically orienting anyone that has their eyes open to knowing approximately where you are. And so this is like a huge deal, because in gunfights, like when you're actually doing engagement with multiple people, if you have a team, let's say, like a squad in like military, if you have a squad and they're like approximately oriented to engage an enemy, and they're trying to find and fix the enemy, meaning that they know that the enemy is approximately within like, a 300-yard distance this way and a 150-yard distance, side to side. They've got them like approximately boxed, but they don't have eyes on, because they haven't killed them yet, right? So like they don't have eyes on, and they're trying to, like, it's very decisive to the finding and the fixing aspect. First you find them, then you fix them, then you fuck them, right? That's the rules, right? So the finding and fixing are like heart surgery, depending on depending on which unit you're in, right? But like it becomes, people get really into, like it requires a lot of individual intuition and skill and stuff to do it well. And It's not like it seems really simple, like, oh, you just pop around the corner and shoot the guy, right, or whatever. Not It's not, maybe one time. It's not like that when you're doing it for a job like every day, and like you're trying to actually like live, you know. Like it becomes very high stakes, and when you fuck it up, it's you know, like it takes nanoseconds, you know, like especially within small arms range. I mean, you're talking like the smallest little mistake can have disastrous consequences, can get multiple people killed, you know, because one guy pops around the corner, and you're not like, you fuck something up because you're like moving, and you gave away a position, and so you're like, because you're moving, you're exposed, and you get somebody that actually knows what they're doing with a rifle. Like if they can see you, I mean, that's like within a second and a half, they can kill like 3 people out of your stack. Now I mean, you're pretty much fucked, you know. Like maybe you can get a guy, kill it, you know, something that's hot shit, like return fire and have it hit the guy and kill him, but you're not, you know, like that's gonna be a fucking showstopper, right? So minutia matters, and the like lasers, if you fire a visible laser outside in a active engagement, everybody, like you're already fighting, right? Like if somebody's shooting or something like that, then like everybody can hear the gunfire. But there's this thing in firefights where it's like, especially in city, like urban environment, which is most of the United States, in terms of where a fight would be, it becomes extremely confusing with multiple gunfire going on, and it reverberating and bouncing around buildings. It becomes extremely difficult to locate where the person is, like where the firing position is, and that's all that you need. Like you need the firing position, that's it. If you get the firing position, you're good to go, because you know how long the human brain can calculate how long a person could sprint away from that position as fast as possible, which they're not going to do. And you can get an idea, like from the time that you locate, like, okay, it's coming from around that corner or whatever, like, you know, it's going to take X number of seconds for the person to sprint to the other side of the building or whatever, and you're calculating all this stuff in your head, like almost subconsciously, right? Like anybody, it doesn't even have to be somebody that's trained or anything. I'm just talking about like the human brain. Like you can get an idea of orientation and space and time and shit, just because that's the way we exist, right? So if you fucking fire a laser in an active engagement at like Twilight or something, where somebody can actually see the motherfucking laser, like the entire beam, like a green laser, let's say, that means that everybody that's looking at the sound of gunfire is going to see your laser. And that's going to be everybody that's in range of the engagement, because they're going to be looking at where the gunfire is, like no matter which side they are. So you're going to orient where you're at to everybody that's in the engagement. That's why lasers, visible lasers in, you know, specifically, are kind of like, I mean, they are useful. They're incredibly useful. Like if you're like hauling ass through a house and you're just like, there's no consideration of anything, you're just killing everything, like it can be very fast. But if you're like, you know, stuff like actual combat rules where it's like you're going to be using your brain and stuff, like you don't want to be firing off lasers willy-nilly. And it's the same thing with fucking IR. We got kind of a freebie back in Iraq, because it's like we're the only people with lasers and night vision, but like these days everybody's got them, so now it's just a totally different game. That's my in-depth answer for lasers. I hope it helps. Okay, what else? What are we doing now? Let's go on to the next topic. This stream's getting long. Unless somebody has something fucking dire they want to talk about. Optimal rifle length? I mean, what caliber are you talking about? Hang on, somebody's asking about airsoft mags. Minimum amount of airsoft mags in a loadout. 6 primary. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need more than 2 pistol magazines for sure. I mean, so if you're using a pistol, like in my opinion, a pistol is good if you need to go incognito and people not see your rifle, and you need to have the pistol in order to have that option. And so I think a pistol is good for that, and I think a pistol is good for like the times when you think that you're safe but you're not, and so you put down your rifle and it's just like not, you know, in arm's reach for some reason because you like put it down in a room and then you get some situation that you didn't even think of where it's like you're gonna have to shoot or die. That's where a pistol is good for. It's not good, like you shouldn't be using a pistol for shooting people. You should be using a rifle. The what was the question? Let's see. So for magazines, like 6 is plenty for like there's different ways of like working this stuff out in terms of like conducting operations or whatever. So like you should have the ability to get more than 6 mags on your person. It shouldn't be more than 6 mags. I think 6 mags on your person, 1 your rifle, 210 loadout is a good amount, unless you're doing something that you need to go like extremely fast and low profile for. And in that case specific scenario, you could go less. You could do like 3. You could do like 1 mag, 2 spares. Most of the stuff you could. Hang on, I gotta back up for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So mags, you can go lower than that. I would recommend having access to more, right? In the vehicle, in a stash spot, like within range of your operation, like your actual objective, shit like that. Like even if it's a can with some mags. Now, if you leave it or something and if you lose control over it, then like you don't want to get it back. RDX rounds are a thing. Okay, barrel length. Yeah, I mean, the like a 12.5 is a really good length. 12.5 is great. I do a lot of 10.3 just because it's really cheap and it's super fucking short for like vehicles and shit. But other than that, I pretty much do 14.5. Like I pretty much do 14.5 all the time just because it's standard. I do 14.5 and 10.3 a lot. I think optimal is probably like 12.5 is better than 10.3, obviously. A lot of people actually like 18-inch, which is kind of unusual, but like, or I wouldn't say a lot of people. I'd say like there is a guy that I respect that really likes 18-inch, and I think that there's some merit to that. Like I'm not talking about like an 18-inch bull barrel. I'm talking about like a carbine profile 18-inch barrel for velocity. It's not Jaeger, no. Somebody says, Dugan, I was told there was going to be another lockdown in September. What do you think? I have no idea. I haven't heard anything about that. What's a lockdown? Yeah, best optic, Holosun 403R. Good luck finding them. I put that optic name out there and then they fucking disappeared. I put it out in an old stream. I was like, 403R, this shit. And then they're fucking sold out everywhere. They're amazing. For 50 cal, I like the AP. I don't like APIT. API is okay if you're gonna burn shit. The AP has more tungsten in it. So Jag asked me, Dugan, you've called world government the beast before. Do you mean that as in the beast from Revelation? So it is used in Revelation. It's used in a lot of. It's also used in Tanakh. Although they're different conceptualizations, but they are referring to the same thing from two different angles, and it is the same thing. Like now, the beast. I don't want to get too far into like interpreting Revelation because people get really sensitive about it, and like people have like a really, like, there's a lot of problems in terms of revelation, conception, and interpretation, in my opinion, like in terms of like the conception of Antichrist and things like that. Because it actually doesn't say Antichrist in Revelation. It talks about lawless one. It doesn't talk about Antichrist. Antichrist is Antichristo from Greek. But the beast is the abstract element between the controller and the slave that is produced in abstraction, that has its own it's very similar. The way to describe beast is if you think about anything that's so when we're talking about sociology, and what I mean is like the analysis of people and the things that they make that aren't physical, real. And what I mean by that, I'll use for example the FBI, right? So the FBI in analysis is you could say that the FBI is like a law enforcement agency, right? That's how most people would describe it. They would say like, this is a law enforcement agency. It has a role of certain jurisdictions, and they go in there and enforce it depending on, how much the MSM wants them to go look at it, and how much the people in charge want them to go look at it. Just kidding. That's not what their directive says, but that's what reality is, right? So the FBI is a sociological structure. What that means is that it has its own bureaucratic function, and the way that it functions internally as an organism. So if we look at the FBI in a humanistic way, the only thing that it is a bunch of people showing up at the same time and having like a certain understanding of agreement with each other in terms of like, we're not going to arrest each other unless you go this far, and then we're going to arrest you if you're an FBI agent, and we do things this way and that way, and like we follow these procedures, right? But the way that we talk about the FBI is like it's an organism, right? Like we talk about the FBI like it's a fucking hive, like hive colony structure. And we don't really use the word colony to describe it. That's in terms of the actual way that we're talking about it. It's very similar to like describing a hive organism. So we're saying like the feds, we're saying FBI, whatever, right? What we're talking about is a sociological structure. And so in sociology, which is kind of like a hack science, but just to use I'm going to use those terms just because it's easy to communicate, right? Well, we can kind of approximately get to what we're trying to attack here, like in terms of understanding, like gaining some understanding of it. So in sociology, a structure is created when a bunch of individual, I shouldn't have used fucking FBI for this example. So there's a concept in sociology called agency. Agency would be like individual will. Like what a person, is doing. So like the agency in the FBI is the FBI agent who like went to school and has an investment of energy into school for criminal justice degree. And then they have investment into the pipeline of whatever they went through to get to the FBI. And then like they're also probably going to have a personal life in some rare cases where they're going to have like a family and a wife that they want to please, and children that they want to raise, and perpetuate their generations. That's the matter of their agency. The structure is the FBI. Like the actual sociological structure is the FBI. What does that mean? It means that there's nobody that's actually the structure. Like there's no person that gets hired that's like, you're the FBI. It's like you work at the FBI. But if the people weren't there, if the agency wasn't there, there is no FBI. You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't exist. It's an abstraction. It's an abstract sociological structure, right? And these are like preliminary definitions that I'm covering just to orient our understanding of like what I'm trying to say. So the fucking, I don't even remember what the question was. Sorry. I didn't want to get you lost, and then I lost myself by trying to explain you. There's an interesting question. Oh, the beast. Yeah. Okay. So what the beast is something that is created that is both in the physical domains of how it affects agency, individuals in the world, not just in an organization, but the entire world, because everything's globalized and tied in. The reason that it's called a beast is because it is an organism that is an abstraction, meaning that it's not limited by the rules of the way that an organism is affected when it exists here on Earth. So what I'm saying is that, like, if you took, like, I don't know, like, what's something that people are, like an alligator, right? So people are pretty, worried about alligators because they're very old, primitive creatures that are, can be very aggressive and they're powerful, right? And so, like, the mind of an alligator is kind of like a monster to some people. I mean, I don't think they should see it like that, but I'm just saying that's the way a lot of people see alligators, right? Because they are dangerous. They're capable of like extreme violence. They just fucking tumble your ass and then you disappear into the mud. Alligators will actually, they typically like pack you, they fucking bring you underwater, and if you're like a person, if you're big, if they're actually hungry, they're gonna eat a little bit off of you, but they're actually gonna like pack you away in mud underneath the water, and they come back later, like after you've decomposed a little bit and get you. So like an alligator is like an actual organism. Now, and being an organism, it comes with all the limitations of organisms in terms of like mortality and things like that, right? In terms of vulnerability and mortality from physicality. A sociological structure is abstract. It's not in the physical world. It's a something that really exists. It's real. Now the word structure is just a name that we assign to it, and that's what I'm using so that it's easy to understand. But the reality is that what this is a creation that man has made that is not in the physical world. Its effects are in the physical world, meaning that the people get paychecks and they show up. And what the FBI does is physical, like how it affects people. That is physical. How it affects the agents and the people that they're engaging with and interacting with. That part is physical. But what the actual entity is abstract. And it's tied into a greater network that is abstract. And it keeps on going and keeps on going. It's bigger and bigger and bigger until you create a abstract sociological structure that is the control paradigm, right? Which means that there is something that we have created in the world that is so big and powerful that it reaches into every nook and cranny anywhere. Anybody that participates in society isn't like living in the woods in a fucking hollowed out tree is going to be engaging with the control paradigm apparatus. That thing is not limited to the FBI. That thing is not limited to a lot of, it is something that is like self-inflating and self-perpetuating, and it has no physical form, and it has no bounding like a traditional organism does. It has its own vulnerabilities and laws that are different than a physical organism, but it is like an organism, right? But we just can't see it right now because society is being told not to accept that this is even a real thing. It's very real. It's fucking real, just as real as a fucking barrel getting stuck down your throat. Like, it's fucking real. The way to look at it, if you look at it like dismissively, like society has always done, by just saying like that's not real, there is no, these are just a bunch of people fucking up, and then we end up getting like all this chaos and shit. Like, that's not really, I mean, at this point, because of globalization and tie-in with through finance, this thing is global, and it is 100%. It is like full-fledged. It's about to take the fucking gloves off. We're close. It's going to happen within our generation, and that is the beast. Now I just skipped I'm skipping a shitload of fucking questions because I just talked a lot, and I'm not going to read them all. All right, what you got? What are we on? Let's wrap it up. Noahide? Okay. Yeah, we said we were going to talk about it. Let's talk about it. All right, what do you want to know about Noahide? It's a huge topic, so what do you want to know about? We're not going to talk about plates. We'll talk about that another time. The sauce. What's the sauce? 7 laws verse 613. Okay. Well, and then somebody else says they know nothing about it. Okay. All right. 101. We're doing no hide 101. Okay. Here we go. Fucking strap in, boys. Okay. All right. So I'm going to answer this in the perspective from somebody that doesn't know anything about it and needs to understand it. That's how I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to try, if you're like an Orthodox Jew watching this and you know exactly where I'm going with this, I'm going to try to be respectful to your religion, if possible. Okay. You have to understand that this stuff is not palatable to people in general. So it's like, you know, people are going to be fucking not happy about it. But like they're asking about it, we're going to talk about it. Okay. So, all right. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna talk about Judaism, other than how it relates to this. So, right now, Judaism has been consolidated under rabbinicism, and by right now I mean like for a long fucking time. Okay, so Jews typically, except for very very rare, you know, enlightened people, they, like when you talk about Judaism, you're talking about rabbinicism, like rabbinic interpretation of Judaism, right? There have been other interpretations of Judaism in the past. They're gone. It is consolidated under rabbinicism. Okay? In rabbinicism, the way that, you know, some of what I'm going to say is not limited to rabbinicism, but Noahide in particular is. In Judaism, right? There is one of the major principles of Judaism is the culmination of the 6,000 year process, which we are currently at 5,700. And can somebody look it up? What year we're at? I'm waiting for the year. I guess we have a lag on the comments here. All right, no talking except for the topic. No fucking sliding. We're in 5,780 something, I believe. Is that correct? 5,783? 5,780. Okay. Yeah, that's approximately 5,780. I don't know the exact year. That's where we're at. The process is 6,000 years. Okay? At the culmination, during this process, right, the 6,000 year mark begins a new era, but before that, we have what's called the Messianic era. The Messianic era is a period of transition where humanity changes in a lot of different ways. In the physical way that most people that don't know anything about Noahide, the way that it changes in that physical realm that people will apparently, you know, readily see, is that you will have the introduction of what's called Mashiach. Now, Mashiach, in terms of Christianity, is very different from Messianic conception and understanding in Judaism. Okay? So you need to understand this first to even get any of this. In Christianity, Messiah is Jesus Christ. Okay? In Judaism, the Mashiach is a system. It is not a person. It is a system. And it is interrelated to like all of creation. Okay? What do I mean by it's a system? I mean that it actually technically involves multiple people. It's not a single person. Um, there is, in popular Judaism, there is what's called the Mashiach, which is like a colloquial term for the Davidic line Mashiach. The Davidic line Mashiach is that is the kingship of Judaism once the world is put into order, in correct order. They are the source of directive for God's will and communicating with like people in terms of authorized anointed rulership of the world is through the Mashiach, the Davidic Mashiach. If you go into technical Judaism, there's actually multiple Mashiach. So, like, this is why I mean it's a system. So there's actually a Mashiach that, you know, depending on the other thing that you should understand is that Judaism is like multiple timelines. So there is a mainstream timeline, which is kind of like the best case scenario for Jews. And so Jews really like to focus on the mainstream timeline. And they like to pretend that there's only one timeline. There's not one timeline. There's multiple timelines. When I say timelines, I mean possibilities. The Davidic Mashiach comes when certain things are in a very specific order. If they're not in order, then he can't come. It's like a locked door, right? The potential of Mashiach exists in people all the time. And so like it's something that's like it's not a person that comes that is like a supernatural being. It is a person, and the connection through God is initiated by God, and it's totally physically conditional based. And well, there's also a spiritual aspect of it too. All right, stop talking about Jesus because you're gonna fucking confuse everybody. I'm trying to explain Noahide here. I'm trying to explain how we get there, right? I'm gonna skip ahead because I don't know if you guys have the attention span. So, Noahide is after you get Messianic eras done, and the world comes under consolidation. Okay, when it comes under consolidation, then you get like under Messianic rule, you get the formal reinstatement of Sanhedrin and the rebuilding of the temple. When the temple stands, a different set of laws come into play. So right now there is interim law that Jews follow that is very specific, has very specific like no-nos, right? And then there is temple law, which would be like after the actual kingdom is made. When that happens, then you get what is called Noahide law. So Noahide law, its origin is from this is in terms of this is the opinion of rabbinic Judaism. Noahide law is from the covenant with Noah, from the Bible, as you know it, right? So it's 7 laws. They seem very like simple in terms of first glance. When they actually get parsed in rabbinic legal interpretation, they become extremely fucking complex. They span things from like no idolatry, you can't have like bad sex acts and things like that. It's like homosexuality, no go, no adultery, no there's no theft, there's no like you can't tear a limb from a living animal. What the hell else? It's mostly stuff like that. The idolatry one and the the decapitation is probably like the main thing that people are gonna have issues with, right? So the idolatry clause covers Christianity. So because of like Holy Trinity, that concept, it pretty much has become a catch-all for anyone that identifies as Christian in terms of rabbinic interpretation. So if you're Christian, what happens is you're automatically going to be guilty of idolatry, and that puts you under the capital punishment. So if you are an idolater, you're going to be subject to capital punishment. There is only one prescribed, authorized method of capital punishment for aliens, which would be like everybody that's not in the Israelite nation, right? That would be decapitation. So, like under Noahide law, if you are a Christian, you will be decapitated. Okay. The decapitation is pretty much across the board for anything except for rare circumstances like certain situations where non-Jews would have sexual relationships with Jews, Jewish women. That would be like stoning. Like you would get stoned for stuff like in certain scenarios, depending on the marriage, the Jewish woman's marriage relationship and things like that. In terms of engagement, everything else is decapitation. So you rip the limb from the animal, that's decapitation. If you steal, decapitation. There's a lot of them, and they really get like from the 7 unfolds a long list of things that you can get decapitated for, and that is kind of like the base of it. If you wanted to know more about Noahide law, so the legal reference for it in modern Judaism is from Maimonides. Maimonides, that is the Greek name of what the Jews call Rambam. That's R-A-M-B-A-M. If you were going to try to look it up, you should probably look up Maimonides, not Rambam, because you can get a lot of Hebrew if you type in Rambam. Maimonides is a guy that lived in the 1100s in Spain, which is the capital of the world then, kind of like the United States now. In Spain, Maimonides wrote a book called Mishnah Torah, which is a codex for navigating Jewish holy books. Okay? It was revolutionary at the time because prior to that, you actually had a monopoly of interpretation directly through rabbi, and it would they used to charge money for it. And so by introducing the Mishnah Torah, it was a game changer in that people could get interpretation in a consolidated form and navigate Torah and law, like Jewish law, through the Mishnah Torah like a phone book. And so it was very radically destabilizing for the Jewish world, not for non-Jews. They didn't know shit about it. There's actually a really interesting story, which is like the reason that you had the entire Spanish Inquisition develop is because of rabbinicism and the relationship to the non-Jews. So like what happened was, when Maimonides in the 1100s wrote Mishnah Torah, it was so destabilizing, but because things didn't move as fast back then, it took a while to pick up. So like Maimonides was dead by the time this stuff his book really started getting around and destabilizing the Jewish order within the diaspora. And so like because the rabbis were losing money, they went to the actual monarch of Spain and complained about it, and then you get through trying to placate to the rabbis' complaints and shit about Mishnah Torah, the Spanish state started to confiscate Mishnah Torah. But what happened was that Mishnah Torah is obviously not written in fucking like English or something, right? Or Spanish, sorry. It's not written in Spanish most of the time. And so like people that are not Jewish, they don't read like Hebrew or any language that Jews would write text in. So they can't tell the difference between the books. And so what happened was when you were getting state authorities attempting to confiscate Mishnah Torah, they would end up confiscating all of the books. So they would confiscate Torah, they would confiscate fucking Talmuds and shit. And they couldn't, they were unable to identify what was Mishnah Torah and what was not. And so like for Judaism, the Mishnah Torah was somewhat new because it was like a codex, but it's not like a holy book, right? It's like a law book. So people wouldn't necessarily flip out if their Mishnah Torah was getting confiscated. It would just be kind of a bummer for them. If they go around confiscating Torah, it's like a huge deal, right? So it caused all kinds of problems. So what happened was elements within the Spanish state, started to like differentiate and learn how to differentiate between the books, and in doing so, they learned about the Talmud. And the Talmud, there's two of them. There's Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmud, and they are very if you read those, it's got a lot of stuff about non-Jews. It's not very they're not gonna like it. You know what I mean? And so when the Spanish state figures out this, then it gets passed into the religious arm, which is the Dominicans. And the Dominicans are the ones that are waging when the actual Spanish Inquisitions go, they're the ones that are roundhousing that shit. And so this is how it works, right? So you get the rabbis complaining about something because they're losing money, and then it ends up getting Jews burned at the stake. That's how it goes, right? And that's kind of the story of that. It's kind of interesting. Nevertheless, Mishnah Torah is from Rambam, from Maimonides, is the consolidated text that you can reference the information about Noahide. And it would be under a section that's called Law of Kings. And if you read, if you look up Maimonides' Law of Kings, Noahide, then you'll get a pretty good consolidated, formal format to look at this stuff for yourself and understand, what I mean, right? Now, what you should know, so what I've been talking about is from the 1100s, right? And you're probably like, well, that's not, sounds extreme, right? Beheading and stuff. This is contemporary thought. This is not, Maimonides is the only authoritative resource that's accepted globally by diaspora and Israel in terms of conduct after the kingdom is there. It's the interpretation that stands in terms of Jewish law. So you're under the current paradigm of Judaism, you're going to get Noahide. Now, the way that it interfaces with the Gentile nations is because one of the laws is to set up courts of justice. That's one of the 7 Noahide laws, to establish courts of justice. Now, in the current day and age, 2020, there are currently, and for several decades now, have been rabbis that have been seeding the U.S. government with the concept of Noahide. And so it is progressively becoming closer to reality. And so what does that mean? That means that if you go to C-SPAN and if you do some clever term searches, you can find C-SPAN video anytime that they have a Chabad rabbi doing the opening prayer for Senate, which they do an opening prayer for Senate every time they do a Senate session, if you're not familiar with this. That's how the Senate works. They do opening prayer. When they're doing an opening prayer, because we're, a cosmopolitan society now, they do a rotation of different types of religion. When they're doing Judaism, sometimes you'll get like Reform Judaism or something like that, but a lot of times it's Chabad. So you're gonna get Chabad rabbis doing the opening prayer. Typically, they talk about Noahide. The reason that they're doing that is because it is in rabbinicism and modern rabbinicism, they consider it an obligation to prepare the nations and begin to start thinking about Noahide in preparation for the cataclysm of the Messianic era that's coming. That's technically here right now. Although some people wouldn't believe that, but or accept that in Judaism, but it is here and it started. And I don't mean that like when I say that the Messianic era has started, I'm gonna get some Christians in here that are gonna be like, like you know what? If you don't know who runs your world by now, you're gonna have a hard time. But like in physicality, and reality is on, like you guys are not in charge, okay? The people who are in charge are going to give you Noahide law, whether or not you like it or not. It'll be done by force and by covet means, and it's got a long ways to go to get there. And so they have lots of time to like try different techniques to get it in, and they've already had some real success with other things that are kind of like unbelievable, like communism and Christianity. So I seriously doubt that they're gonna have any problem with Noahide. So you have the Senate is opening its prayer sessions with Noahide prayer, and that's going on currently, and it's been going on for some time. When it's a Chabad rabbi, so you have at your Senate that makes your laws, they are hearing the term Noahide a lot now. The way that is presented is also known as universal law. So in formality, they'll use the term Noahide law. In like broad speaking, like in order to engage the public, they use the term universal law. This has been replicated and shared by everybody from the LGBTQ movement all the way into the UN's 2030 agenda. So if you go to the UN website and if you look at their 2030 agenda, one of the core pillars is universal law. The universal law that they're actually talking about is Noahide law. I don't think the UN knows that, but I know that. And if you go to the UN and if you read the Mishnah Torah and if you take a little bit of time to understand like how progressive this is in terms of being seated into the government apparatus, you will also understand it. This is not a exaggeration or this is not like a lie or like a over exaggeration. This is what's happening. So you have currently like the predicament and the staging of the world order is moving into Noahide law in a slow transition. And there's not any, at this point, humanity is not on guard. And so that like if things remain the same, you will get there. Okay? Like on the present course. Okay? The LGBTQ movement, you'll probably associate that with the idea of the rainbow flag. The reason that the LGBTQ is a rainbow flag is because that is the Noahide flag. Now, in technicality, Noahide is 7 colors, and the rainbow flag has gone through multiple colors from like 8 to 6 to 7. But the actual, like what it really is the Noahide flag. It is the flag of the Noahide. It is the universal flag. Now, the reason that the rainbow is associated with Noahide is because in the case of Noah, in God's promise to Noah, God promises Noah he will not flood the earth and kill living flesh on the earth. And to signify that promise, he will give the rainbow. And so like as long as you see rainbows, the earth will not be flooded again, right? And that is the reason that Noah, the case of Noah is associated with Noahide law. And so the rainbow flag that is in LGBTQ is actually the no-hide flag, but it's being sold to them under the universal flag. This is the reason that there have been cases where the rainbow flag has been raised in like U.S. embassies and U.S. government buildings, if only temporary, right? So you've had cases where U.S. embassies around the world have had the LGBT flag raised up and like left all day, and it's actually caused problems in terms of like federal government ordinance and stuff like that. The reason that it's LGBTQ is because it can be sold as a human rights and universal concept to just get the idea, the pre-programming in the door, so that people see the flag and accept the flag because it's not confrontational, right? This is also the reason that the United States flag has been brought to half-mast at an increasing rate. So if you haven't noticed this, if you stop and think about it for a minute, you will notice that the United States flag, the American flag, has been increasingly brought to half-mast over the last 20 years. That's not an accident, that's on purpose. And if you can actually look at the legal orders of flag being brought to half-mast, and you will see a fucking hockey curve. And so it is increasing in its frequency. And that is on purpose because they're bringing down the American flag. It's a visual and psychological thing that is multi-decade. The LGBTQ flag, the rainbow flag that you associate with gay rights and stuff like that, was introduced by a man named Gilbert Baker in San Francisco in the 70s. Gilbert Baker is a Jew. Okay? And so, this is the no-hide flag. Regardless of if it has 8 colors or 6 colors, it's going to end up at 7 in the end. Okay? It's the no-hide flag. It's pretty clever. They almost got away with it. But, you shouldn't. Deception is not the way. And so I'm telling you the truth. And so, this is the extreme, both the extreme irony of the situation, and also the example of how extreme it is, because the LGBTQ flag is being promoted by homosexuals, and under no-hide law, homosexuals will be decapitated. Okay. Now there are in technicality, lesbians I don't think get decapitated, but like man on man homosexual, that's decapitation. So you have people that are going to get decapitated flying the gay flag because they identify it with universal rights. That's how they identify. That's how it's sold to the homosexual community, if there is one. I don't believe in community, but so it's ironic that homosexuals raise the LGBTQ flag because they don't know any better. They don't understand what's going on. But they will be decapitated. And it shows you, it really demonstrates the level of deception and like how extreme this whole thing is. Because it's kind of like, on one hand, it's like, well, if humanity is so dumb that they're just gonna follow whatever the fuck you do, then who cares? Like, just, like if they can't save themselves, they can't save themselves. On the other hand, it's very sad and visceral that this is the method that will slowly, like they're not going to take an avenue where it's like you're all going to be under no-hide law and then show you the rainbow flag because it'd be unpalatable to your current, psychological profile under your conditioning. By getting it in the door with universal law and selling you the concept of universal law first, and then transitioning to like full no-hidism later, they can actually boiling frog you into it, and it's gonna work. Like if humanity keeps on going on the same path, this is gonna work. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to get anyone in the general public to even accept what I'm saying as like with any seriousness because of how hoity the humanity is. You know, like you guys, I mean, like you guys understand that like, you know, like communism killed 100 million people, and that's a Jewish thing. Like communism's a Jewish thing, and it had a massive effect, and nobody saw it coming, and they would never. If I would have come to you in 1890 and said like, hey, you're gonna have fucking batshit communism, and like you're gonna fucking kill 100 million of each other, you retards. Everybody would just be like, oh yeah, really, you know, and they wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you right now, you're gonna be fucking Noahide. You're gonna go under a fucking Noahide caste religion. I'm telling you right now. Like I mean, if that's what you want to do, then do it. You've had presidential proclamations from every president since fucking, I don't know how far back. I mean, it's far. I mean, I know it's been like Reagan's done it, Bush has done it, you know, Obama and Trump have done it. They've done presidential proclamations reaffirming Noahide law on Education Day. It goes back even further than that. They were doing it before Reagan. Now, what you should know in terms of the idolatry clause of Noahide, Muslims are not considered idolaters. And the reason why is because in Islam, although they use the term Allah, the conception of God is singular and unified. And so it falls within the boundaries of not being idolatry. It is like, you know, a different name, but but the same mechanic as what is legally allowed. So like Muslims will not be beheaded, but Christians will. Okay, lesbians will not be beheaded. Homosexuals will. Okay. Now the way that they get it in will be through the satellite apex system of state control. So like right now, your state is under apex control, and that is the reason that you're all wearing face masks, and why like industry and state are all mixed up in terms of. I'm sure that like I don't know what it's like where you're at, but I guarantee you it's probably like how it is here in rural Missouri, but on steroids where you're at. So when I turn on the radio, like if I don't listen to fucking radio, but if I'm like at work or something, like doing a job, and I'm with somebody and they're in their work truck and they're turning on the radio, I'm going to hear about a bajillion commercials of small businesses that, you know, are lost in the fucking sauce. And they're basically taking their they're taking their business model, no matter what it is, whether it's like a fucking painting company, like we just go around and paint houses, or whether it's like a sandwich shop or a fucking tree nursery or a fucking like GMC car salesman. It doesn't matter. They are relating all of their commercials to COVID-19. So like the paint guy is like, you know, if you were gonna paint your house, you know, on your time off from COVID-19, but you know you got off track or whatever, then I can paint your house. You know, the fucking tree nursery is like, you know, it's a great time to get outside while we're all stuck at home. It's a great time to get outside and plant some trees. This is what's happening all across the United States. So it's an entire inundation of every single business. Every single one, no matter how small it is like riding this thing. And what COVID-19 is a consolidating world government directive. They created the virus, they released it, and they give you the solutions, and you comply. All of your state is complying, your municipalities are complying, and your private industry is complying by choice. They're not even resisting. And so this is the first step in a long, multi-decade, multi-generational progress to get you to transition your way of life and your acceptance of what's going on into anything that they want. And so this is the reason that I say, you can laugh now, you're going to be fucking Noahides, and you're going to lose your fucking religion. You're all going to lose it. It's going to be wiped away, and you're going to become Noahides. Okay? And you probably hear that and you're like, oh no, well, you're not doing enough right now to stop it. And you haven't done enough before, neither did our prior generation or the generation before that. Nobody's willing to do anything. So you're not going to do anything. So you're going to lose it, you know? I mean, you're on the present course, on a present paradigm, like you're not going to escape. Yeah, they don't want to resist. And so, like, you know, and so you're going to be fucking Noahides. You're going to be a Noahide caste religion. You're going to get the people, most of the Christians are honestly so, like, you know, not even religious. And so they're going to be like, oh, I get beheaded? Okay, like, I won't do that. Let's be Noahide. That's what they're going to do. I mean, fucking be serious here, right? Like, most Christians are probably watching this and they're like, oh, I can't believe you talk about Christians being, like, Christians are going to get beheaded. Like, Jews wouldn't do that. Like, you fucking wait. You got no idea. No fucking idea. Fucking evangelical Christians are the ones that fucking, I mean, evangelical Christians are giving fucking more money to the state of Israel than the fucking United States government. So does that answer Noahide questions or what? Now I should say this. I'm gonna give you a caveat, right? Now, I do not believe that Noahidism is actually correct in terms of Judaism interpretation. Now, being that, like, I hold zero water in that at all, and I'm probably be the first to get decapitated. I'll probably get fucking T-zoned well before fucking Noahide law comes. But I do not believe, from my investigation, study, and reading Tanakh, that that interpretation is correct. Not only that, I believe that the introduction of Noahidism probably approximately coincides with Isaac Newton. And the reason why is because Isaac Newton created that's like the apple tree guy, right? Isaac Newton created the original like rainbow color palette from like looking at studying color and studying prisms and shit like that. And he came up with 7 colors. That is his color system, and it was so because of Isaac Newton's influence in physics. It was so influential in the world that it went everywhere. And at the time, Isaac Newton's colors included like kind of I mean, I can't remember them all, but there's some strange colors in there, right? Now, Isaac Newton was a smart guy. The only problem with it is that there's not really 7 colors. So the colors are arbitrary, and in actuality, you're looking at your interpretation and your perceptual slice of the electromagnetic spectrum of that's what we call it, right? We call it the electromagnetic spectrum. That's not really what it is. Electromagnetic spectrum, when people talk about it in science and physics and shit, it's the best term that we have now that the world accepts. It's not actuality. It's actually much bigger than that. It's everything. But people don't understand that yet. And the reason why is because when people are trying to learn about the electromagnetic spectrum, what they're actually doing from their drive, like what the Jews would call yesod, which is like your internal drive, they are of change, of like wanting to cause change. They're wanting to cause change. Most people in the world want to cause change so that they can manipulate the world to elevate themselves in a worldly way. And so by doing so, they forfeit their ability to see what is actual, because what is actual is outside of the grasp of what we can wield. And it's very demoralizing in terms of like cutting you down to size and making you realize that you're not nothing at all. So when people like Isaac Newton analyze the colors, try to create a color spectrum, it's in order to create a system to build something else off of that can be used for worldly purposes. And so he sees it as 7 colors, but it's not actually 7 colors. There's, basically unlimited color, and there's limited color in terms of our range of what we can see. But it has to do with the way that we're constructed, like in terms of physicality. It is like what is permitted to us to see. And they're actually continuous between the spectrums, and you get visual bands that are created in concentration because of the way that our physicality is constructed. Like I'm talking about our cone structure of our eyes and our brains, and in the way that which is a separate facet even from the actual construction of reality, which is all derived in contrast, like things being contrasted against each other. What does all that shit mean that I just said? What that means is that there's not really 7 colors. Isaac Newton just thought there was 7 colors. What that means is that the 7 color model was pervasive and spread around the world while Isaac Newton was alive, which would have been the 1600s. What that means is that there's a very good chance that the concept of noahidism derived from the base understanding of the 7 color system that Isaac Newton put out in the 1600s. Where you go with it from that is up to you. But what I will say is that I know that the rainbow being represented by 7 colors is arbitrary and is not actual creation by God. And so anyone that claims that is speaking on behalf of God. And they're incorrect. What the electromagnetic spectrum actually is something that is infinite and doesn't end. It has no spectrum. It has no right and left. It is a circle. It is continuous, and it crosses all domains. And when we look at it like electromagnetism, we're looking at a narrow understanding of it. And what we see and what we comprehend in the tools that we make to see and to have effect in physicality, things like electricity or sound or things like that, we are only seeing a limited slice of the pie of what is actually there. And it is not limited to something that is like apart from physicality, where we're saying like, there's color and it's this wavelength, and these are ions that are this, they're fucking, photons bounce, shooting like a wave, photons, but they're also packets, but they're, whatever the flavor of the day science is, it's incorrect. The reason being, number one, because it's infinite in its depth, and the greater tools that you would create to analyze it, you'll just continue to uncover deeper and deeper unfoldings of what is there. It is incorrect in terms of the spectral limitation that we analyze it at. It doesn't stop. It's continuous in a circle and doesn't end. It's incorrect in terms of that what we see and perceive of it is limited to our construction, the way that we're constructed, meaning that in the spectrum there are like if you went into the electromagnetic spectrum in terms of like wavelengths, like you're going to get into gamma rays. Well, gamma rays like shoot through fucking planets like they're not there. We look at gamma rays, similar to like the way that we look at X-rays, but even more wild, right? The reality is that you could have been constructed to see gamma rays, but you're not. You're constructed to see lower wavelengths. But you don't have to see them, right? Like you could have been constructed to do something else with them besides see. And this way, like the entire concept of like numerical association to rainbows and Noahidism, it should give Jews pause, because you would not want to. It would not be good for Jews to instill a world government system based off of something that they claim to be from God that isn't actually from God. And I'm sure that by the standards of Judaism, you could understand what the consequence of that would be. It would be a false post-Messianic system. And I'm sure that you know that is not going to be allowed to happen. Now, somebody says, AJO says, we have no need to see gamma. And that is correct. And if you're a Jew, what I would reference for that would be the passage of "This day was made for you." So here's a good question. This is an excellent question. James asks, will they go after people bugging out in Montana, Idaho, etc.? So we have to take a timeline approach here of a possible timeline, okay? So let's take in this timeline, let's make some assumptions. Let's assume that the nation states fall, which the current path that they're on is unsustainable, like societally. It's not sustainable. It's entirely compromised, and they have no autonomy whatsoever. They're monetarily completely inundated with no free will. They're going slow on transition because it's calculated to be the most tactically advantageous for success. They could go faster if they want, and they will at certain times. In the present course of timeline, if we extend out in the future, we assume that like you do get world government, and we assume that obviously there's going to be a ratcheting down after that, like a consolidating of creating a new law system for all of the satellite states, and making it very tight in the way that they get top-down apex compliant. It's already pretty good compared to like 1980, right? So like in 1980, the consolidation of government in top-down compliance was way more separated, and the United States balance of power, for instance, in the United States, but this is not limited to the United States, this is global. But for the United States in the 1980s, we still had the semblance of like division of power, balance of power, as is, dictated by the Constitution. That will have to go away in formality, because you can't have, you're not going to be able to have the Constitution when this happens. It's going to have to match up on paper with what is actually being done. Right now, it doesn't match up in reality, but people still have to placate to what's on paper, because you haven't elected a new Constitution. If you get a new Constitution dictated to you or tricked to you by synthesis, then you're not going to have any choice, which is the direction that you're going. If we go into a system where you get tight control of the
state structures and sociological structures, both business and private and state. It's all consolidated and apex compliant. Then you are going to get, it will reach to you if you're bugging out in Montana and shit. It will reach to you anywhere that connects, meaning finance. So like anytime that you have any type of exchange of money is an opportunity for connection. And any opportunity for connection is the opportunity of like pressuring you, right? And what you need to understand is that this is a multi-generational process. So this isn't like you may be bugging out, but is your child going to be able to bug out, and is your grandchild going to be able to bug out? And the simple answer to that is no, not in the way that people are thinking about it. Now, if you go old school, no power, like have your own water source and your own fuel source and make your own food, and you're not using anything from anywhere else, and you don't owe property taxes, then you can be isolated to the extent that they're not sending patrols to go like take you out or something, which could happen. I mean, who knows? But even if you did that, it's totally limited. Your success is totally limited to your generation. Over enough generations, it's like, it's not sustainable. They're gonna lose it, right? You can imagine. You can imagine your great grandkids, like, are they gonna have the same understanding or perspective as you? With the current paradigm of propaganda, of misinformation, like, no, they're gonna be fucking swallowed up. What if you run a small set of solar panels? I mean, Kevin, come on. Are you joking? Yeah. So finance right now is the system of consolidation. And this is the reason why, especially in earlier streams that I've deleted, but it's a common thread through all these streams. This is the reason that I've been trying to explain to people that watch these videos that you were enslaved by your agreement to use finance. And your nation states are enslaved because they will not stop using finance. And the reason why is because they fundamentally misunderstand that money is a resource. It's not a resource, it's a weapon. And it always has been. And it can be difficult to accept this, especially nowadays when people like measure the size of their dick by looking at how much money they have. And when we literally, I mean, the current state of society globally is almost verbatim an equivalent of like value in terms of ethic is equated to money. But it's actually the opposite is true. The most pure things in life have nothing to do with money at all, and the beast system that we have created is attempting to access all of that. They're trying to get a hold of your children as young as possible. Your baby, when you have a child, when you have a kid that comes into the world, perfect. The child is perfect. But the money itself is not a resource. It's not yours. You can't have it. It's not even physical. Do you understand that? Like, money isn't even physical. You may feel like you're walking around with dollar bills in your hand. You're not. When you use money, in actuality, what is really going on, although you can't see it, is that you, no matter what it is, if you're selling something, let's say that you picked 100 apples off a tree, and then you want to go sell them. You know what you're doing when you sell them for money? You are saying these 100 apples are only worth 50. That is what you're saying. They're only worth 50 apples. You're taking your 100 apples that you picked and you're turning it into 50 apples. And that is what you're doing when you're using money. And it's not limited to apples, it's limited to your time. It's not limited to your time, it's not limited to your anything. Like you are giving away your energy and giving it to other people, and they are in turn running it through a very distended global pipeline to then get turned into a weapon to consolidate your society to work against you and your generations, and to consolidate humanity into a physical organism which is against God. And at the top of it is a man. And it's not the Mashiach. And it's not Jesus. The person who's going to be at the top of it is going to be, in Judaism, the one that fights the Mashiach. If you didn't know, now if you were, it's not going to be David. David comes later. The Jews don't know this. The Jews miss David for a long time. David will come later. David comes later. You have to now have a transition period prior to David. So you're going to get a Mashiach that you probably haven't heard much about if you're a Jew. He will be mistaken for Antichrist. He's not Antichrist. He's not he could probably be termed the lawless one because he's going to be going up against the current world order. But what you have to understand, like, we could talk about this in a lot of perspectives, right? And so, like, a Christian could watch this and be really upset because they feel like I'm not placating Christianity. But it's your interpretation of Christianity. And same thing with Judaism. Like, you can watch these videos and you can be upset that, like, I'm not a Jew and that, I'm not placating to your interpretation of Judaism. But it's your interpretation, or rather, it's rabbinic interpretation. There's only one interpretation that matters, right? And it's not ours. Right? Now, what the Jews need to understand is that, like, we could do it this way logically, right? So, in Judaism, like I'm talking about like mainstream ass Judaism, like the thing that if you talk to a Jew on the street, what they're going to be conceiving in their head most of the time, not all of them, most of the time. For David, what will have to be necessary for the final kingdom is you're going to have a system of equal measure, okay? And you're going to have a system where the world is not hungry anymore and everything is abundant. Do you honestly think the path that you're going right now is going to achieve that? I mean, are you insane? This is the opposite of that. This is the absolute. This is everything that's going on right now. This is all against God. You're going to have you need a transition period that will eliminate money, because money in itself as a technology and what it actually is, not what you think it is, not what you think when you hold a $100 bill in your hand and go buy a fucking Reuben sandwich or whatever. That is not what money is. Money is a displacement and injustice, and as a technology, and it has to be replaced, because there is no equality in money whatsoever as a mechanic of its technology. And it can't become that way by just because you want it to be or because you fake it. And the reason that money is this way is very purposeful, because money doesn't come from physicality. It comes from the other world. And that's why money is an abstraction. What you hold in your hand is physical. That's cash. That's coin. That's specie coin. What the actual money is not in the physical world. What that means is that it is from the same world where all of the other perfect concepts are transmitted to you from. And it's transmitted to all of humanity as a system. Just because it's transmitted does not mean that it's going to stay. What that means is that because it's clearly a displacement, and it is clearly the dispossessing force that has caused change in the world, what that means is that it's a temporary splash to move things around, but it's going to go away. And the reason why is because you cannot have decency in this world while you're using money. And that is the reason that in Judaism they talk about, like I borrow the term, I use the term equal measure, because it helps to solidify and clarify that you can't possibly have a Mashiach out of this current predicament, because there is no interest in equal measure. Right, it's a temporary disruptor to cause displacement, to move around everything like sand pouring between the hands. And every single time that it switches and the sand pours out, some sanders remain, right? But then a lot of it falls between the fingers. And then you sift it to the other hand, and then some sand falls between the fingers and some stays, right? And so it's not an equal system. It's not an equal measure system. It is a displacement system. And it causes change at a rapid pace. And that is what money is. And so what that means is that it is not sustainable, and so it will go away. And it'll go away not by man's choice, but when it's the time for it to go away. Okay, what else you got? Question? I'm going to wrap it up. We're at 2.5 hours now. This is entirely too long. Even gold and silver. You will have, there's really only one way to do it, and that is going to be to establish, you're going to establish equal measure. It's going to be relative ratio between things, and your base is going to be water. And the reason why it's going to be water is because both your Mashiach concept, like in its systematic form, is reciprocal of water, and because it's connected to all people. Like all people have to consume water, and the earth is covered with a percentage of water. So you're gonna have water is going to be your point of origin and fixation, and you're gonna have built off of that. You're gonna have relative. You're gonna have a relative established ratio of. That's where you're gonna derive value from. It's gonna be from water. Doug, should I stock up on Hershey's bars or Kisses? I would get it. I would get into distilling, honestly, for alcohol. That's what I would do. I would get distillation equipment to distill alcohol rather than that. Yeah, no, I did wear the mask. I wore a gas mask to go to the box store. It was fantastic. I tried to go in with no mask first. I got stopped. They're like, you have to have a mask. I was like, okay, I have a problem. And then I went and got my fucking gas mask. I wear a Draeger is what I wear because it's got the full face visor, and you can rotate your NATO filter any way that you want. So you can do center located, or you can do left side for right hand shooting, or vice versa for left hand shooting. It's a very good mask, Draeger NATO standard. It was fantastic because it is actually really effective because as you went through the store, you would get looks and you could tell that the wheels were turning. So like every person that would see you would be like, oh, that is so, wait, I'm wearing a mask. You know what I mean? It was fantastic. It is great. What's really great about it is that if they're smart, they're gonna also then think like, does my mask actually do anything? That's what's gonna be great about it. And there's nothing, like you could tell that they didn't like it when I came in. Like when I was like, oh, I got a mask, and I came back in wearing that. But you could tell they were kind of like, oh, it was fantastic. It's like probably the best protest that you could do because it also kind of gives them a little boost. You know what I mean? Like I guess not everybody is like, Now it was kind of weird when I got the ticket for 2x4 because I had to like break the seal to talk because it just doesn't project through the plexiglass screen very well, like in terms of sound. No, I get a seal. I get a fucking seal. It's got a big rubber pad on it, so it'll compress on the beard. Do you like a telephone game? I got a CBRN telephone string game. Okay. Last questions. Any last questions? If there's any good ones, then I'll stay on for a second to talk about it. I'm gonna go. How big are my taters? I don't have. Well, I do have some potatoes in the ground right now. I've got some French fingerling potatoes. I probably need to pull them up. I got really bad. We got tobacco hornworm. They'll eat that. So they've done a number on them. Favorite food? I mean, what is my favorite food? Garlic, probably. Do I own any lasers? Yes. I'm about to plant some sweet potato. I got, I don't know, probably 40 sweet potato slips. I'm about to plant them. Sausage, gravy, and biscuits. It's heavy, bro. I'm with you. I'm into that. Yeah, pickles are definitely close. Uh, Pickled foods, I like pickled foods a lot. It's kind of pickles. Like when you say pickles, I think of pickled foods. So it's kind of like a huge food group. It's not really one food for me. Sam 7 or Mac 90? Mac 90, bro. Oh, that's interesting about cranberry hibiscus. I actually just I planted 4 hibiscus today, actually. Cuttings. Nice. I haven't shot any 9x39. I don't know. It's not very available here. I never did it. Ooh, fermented vinegar. Ah, man, I don't know. I mean, probably fermented. Vinegar's good, though. Pickled eggs are amazing. Enforced 10% coupon? I don't know. Probably in the trash. FMJ or FMJ? FMJ. Sardines? Not usually, only because I don't like the canning operation. If I made them myself, I'd like them. I like smoking fish. I'd like to try fermenting some fish. I haven't done it. Garlic. You should grow garlic. So you asked me what they should grow next. I said grow garlic. Favorite night vision? I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of just a simple guy. I like the 14s. They're like not too crazy. It'd be nice to have a more streamlined 14. Like a single binocular that was very low profile. That would be cool. They haven't really. They're mostly doing like dual tube. I think like a single streamlined tube would be great. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. You guys have a good night. Love you. Bye.